Hey everybody, what's up? This is TJ Sterling, president and lead artist of RAE Comics, and I'm here on comicbookyeti.com, and I am talking about my amazing, exciting new comic book series, Joystick Angels. It's live on Kickstarter right now. It's an incredible series. It's got a musical soundtrack. I know you guys are going to absolutely love it. Thank you for taking the time. Me and my brother both grew up huge Star Trek and Star Wars fans. Big, Babylon 5 fan as well. I'm a big, JMS, J. Michael Straczynski, a huge fan of his writing. So we just loved sci-fi. We loved that genre of space operas. And we wanted to do something that was kind of cool, something a little different. And we also didn't really see any space opera style comics being done in the indie comic book space. So we thought it was kind of like a prime opportunity to really come up with something. My brother by trade is a musician, so he is an artist in a different capacity. I typically draw and write comics. He writes and produces, hip hop, techno, and R&B music, as well as pop and house. So he tells a different story with the tapestry of sound, and I tell a story with the tapestry of visual arts. So we figured, hey, why don't we combine those types of talents together to create a comic book series that would not only be visual, but auditory as well. When you think about Star Wars or Star Trek or, anything in that vein has a really amazing soundtrack. It has a soundtrack that is, pulls on the heartstrings. It's inspirational, it's motivational. It's, it captures the wonder of space travel and, science. I think the very first comic book him and I ever read that had a tape that accompanied it with like a soundtrack and voices was a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comic from like '94. It came with an audio cassette. Put it in your Walkman, if anybody remembers a Walkman. You would listen along with each chapter. And it had sounds. If they were walking through a sewer, you could hear the water drop. And those types of things were really inspiring to us. And we never forgot how cool that experience was. So we wanted to kind of replicate something like that. Now, this particular soundtrack is only 8 tracks for the Joystick Angels comic book, and it actually comes with the comic book. You can get a physical CD, or you can get a Spotify playlist, or you can get it on Apple Music, or you can get a digital download, any one of those. And we recommend that people read the comic and then listen to the tracks at the same time to give you that enhanced experience of the actual book. The artist that we had to be really, really good at drawing mechanical items, because whether the character has a phaser or a blaster gun or a belt or a cool costume, a lot of it is angular, straight, and mechanical forms. So I kind of was on this search for looking who is a really, really good mechanical artist that can draw mechanical things like robots and ships. And I ran into, our penciler, our sequential artist, Nats Ledesma. Nats lives in the Philippines, and he's an incredible illustrator. He does I think his favorite comic book is Transformers, and he draws lots of Transformers fan art. So he was really, really adept and kind of perfect for working on something like this. So once we found him, it was kind of like a perfect marriage. He was like, yeah, I'm down to do the entire book. I'm ready to go. Just give me the script and I'll start drawing. And then took us a little bit longer to find the colorist, though. We went through quite a few different people that did color samples for us, and nothing really quite felt right until we met Loris Ravina. He has the eye for what we were looking for. He knew, like, okay, these guys want 80s, they want, retro but sci-fi, and we want bright, vibrant colors that are really, out of this world. And he kind of captured that with every single panel. So we're just honored to have him, and so excited to just show everybody the printed book with the art and the colors in it. I loved Robotech. I loved Battle of the Planets. I thought that was really cool. What else? I was a big Samurai Pizza Cats fan. I know that's not really in this same genre, but like, to me, like, the colors are so bright and vibrant and kind of like ostentatious, and it just gave you this feel like I want to be in this world because it just feels fun. And that's kind of like what we were trying to bottle with just the look of Joystick Angels. We wanted to feel fun and exciting, and the palettes to be different, because my last book, Alchemist, which we kickstarted last summertime, is more of a darker book. It's a dark sci-fi book, so the palettes are a lot darker. A lot of the times the situations happen at night. So visually, it's a different looking book overall. And with Joystick Angels, we wanted to go super far to the right, something way different. And that's kind of like, I guess, what inspired us in terms of visual stuff. I would say that the representation in comics across the board is 10 times better than it ever was. Again, when I was a kid, there was some characters in comics that were, POC, but not really a whole lot. And they weren't drawn by people that looked like me or people that I knew or experiences that I had. So there was a certain disconnect with the authenticity. And I think that so many times, comic companies will get into trouble for pandering to specific audiences by not hiring, creators of color to create characters of color. So I write what I know, and I also write from a place of authenticity with all of my stories. So right now in the indie comic space and in the comic book space in general, and all big companies, diversity is a big thing. Inclusion's a big thing. People want to be included. They want to include everyone. So I think it's definitely grown exponentially in a really, really good direction. This is our second Kickstarter. The first Kickstarter for Alchemist, we raised over $20,000 in 30 days, and which was incredible to me because I'd never done a Kickstarter before. I'd never taken the dive online and said, hey, if I don't make all my money, then this whole month was for nothing. It's kind of a scary thought. And when we had no conventions, all these people who typically buy my book every single year weren't able to do it. So they showed up big time for the Kickstarter, and people were throwing money at it just to support the movement. And I would say the same thing kind of translated over to our next Kickstarter campaign, that we had so many people that were excited about the next project from TJ Sterling and RAE Comics, that, hey, we know that you're always working on Alchemist. We love that. But what other ideas do you have? Before the first Spider-Man cartoon or animation or movie was ever made, they had 30 years of content sitting in a vault or on a shelf, and some people are lucky to make one comic book series and get a movie deal. But at the same time, is your intention to have a movie deal, or is your intention to be a comic book publisher and have a library of stories? And for me, our ethos, and my company, our ethos is to make great stories and not, make them specifically for the purposes of Netflix or things like that. Now, we won't say no to those things, but our goal is to continue to make great content for the years to come, great stories. I can tell you that the next thing on the docket is Alchemist number 5, the sixth book. I know it's a little confusing. So there's issue 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, which are already published. That's 5 books. Then issue 5 and 6 are on their way. That'll be out in the next 5 to 6 months. So that's the next thing from RAE Comics, is another book from our flagship series. We're going to have a book called Villainous, which is our cyberpunk noir tale, which is really, really cool. We've already got a couple of those issues done behind the scenes. We're just waiting for lettering and coloring to finish. We've got a weird, risque sci-fi sex comedy coming out towards the end of the year, which is just all laughs and silly, crude, weird humor. I'm collaborating with a lot of other writers across the indie space to put out these weirder, different, unique stories. So more stories from RAE Comics, absolutely, more comic books. We are venturing into more multimedia stuff like toys and, obviously apparel, which we already have. We are in talks with a few different production companies for gaming and, animation and TV stuff. We're having those conversations, but again, we're in a place where we're not forgetting our roots. We're a comic publisher by heart, and we want to make sure we're great and amazing at that before we do anything else.